There is something that actually binds you to the screen of a movie theater when it's about someone trying to escape from a dreadful position that they're confronted with. If you add in the fact that you're being held prisoner by Nazi soldiers and your method of freeing yourself has an extreme dose of claustrophobia built into the path to freedom, you are now on the front row of the 1963 award-winning film The Great Escape. March 24, 1944, 200 plus Allied prisoners of war dressed in civilian clothes awaited anxiously for the opening of Harry's trap door. Each one truly believes this hole in the floor and the tunnel below has become his best opportunity to escape the Third Reich's most advanced prison camp, Stalag III in eastern Germany. Deep within each man rests the hope of returning home to his family and friends. This escape attempt is the end of a year-long commitment of more than 600 fellow officers. The escape was the brainchild of squadron leader Roger Bushell of the Royal Air Force. He was shot down while assisting in the Dunkirk evacuation in May of 1940. After crash landing and before he could hide, he was captured by German patrol. For being the mastermind of this, the greatest of escapes, he has been given the code name Big X. Australian journalist Paul Brickell became involved in the war as a fighter pilot. He was shot down over Tunisia in March of 1943. He was taken to Stalag III and became engaged in Bushell's X organization as a lookout or stooge. Because he was claustrophobic, the fear that he might panic in the tunnel, he was not given a place in the escape attempt. Following the announcement of the murders of 50 of the recaptured escapees, Brickell decided to document the event. He and fellow prisoner Conrad Norton interviewed and collected numerous individual stories. They also chronicled their own recollections. It was from these that he wrote the book The Great Escape in 1950. The book brought the event to the public's attention, and it was from that book that the 1963 film of the same name was based. For 8 years, producer and director John Sturges shopped his idea for the film adaptation. Even though he was considered a successful director in Hollywood, not a single major studio pursued his pitch for the film seriously. It wasn't until the success of his 1960 movie, The Magnificent Seven, that United Artists paid attention. They gave him the go-ahead to make the film with a $4 million budget. No more than 6 pine trees could be found growing together anywhere in Southern California. So filming was moved to Europe. All the outside escape sequences were shot in the Rhine country and areas near the North Sea. Steve McQueen's motorcycle scenes were filmed near the Austrian border and the Alps. Sets for the barrack interiors were constructed on sound stages at the Bavaria Film Studio just outside Munich. The tunnel set was constructed of wood filled with plaster and dirt and open on one side. The set ran the entire length of the studio. A dolly track ran the length of the set in order to shoot the scenes of the prisoners working and moving through the tunnel. The camp was built in a clearing in Perlacher National Forest near the studio. When the studio's backlot proved to be too small, the production team obtained permission from the German government to shoot in the forest adjoining the studio. John Sturges had to show the West German Minister of Interior his plans. In final permission to bulldoze, he had to promise to plant 2 pine tree seedlings for every tree removed or damaged when the production was over. The actor Judd Taylor said the camp set was so authentic that on one day he came upon a man walking his dog who was very distressed when he came upon the site. The man was greatly relieved, however, when he learned that it was just a movie set. During the early preparations of the film and the building of the camp, the area experienced an extraordinary amount of rain. The filming schedule was altered due to the rain. This meant that the barrack interior scenes from the middle of the movie were actually shot first. The movie features no main female characters. Early on in the production, director John Sturges began receiving memos from United Artists requesting female roles in this movie. One suggestion was having the dying Ashley Pitt cradled in the lap of a beautiful girl. The studio wanted to cast this part having a Miss Prison Camp contest in Munich. Sturges would have none of it. He insisted that there was no room for a woman in the POW camp. Steve McQueen, James Garner, and Richard Attenborough received the highest billing. However, each one was not the first choice for that eventual role. They originally wanted Kirk Douglas for the portrayal of Hiltz, and they wanted Burt Lancaster for the role of Henley. Richard Harris was originally cast as Big X, Roger Bartlett. He dropped the role because he was displeased with the diminished role resulting from various script changes. Because of this, Attenborough was cast at the last minute. John Sturges admitted that the screenplay went through 6 writers and 11 different versions. It was actually still under development when filming started. Many of the roles in the movie were based upon real men. Steve McQueen's role as Virgil Hiltz, the Cooler King, was based on at least 3 pilots, including Major David M. Jones. He is best remembered as the flight commander during Doolittle's raid. Richard Attenborough's role as Roger Bartlett was modeled after Roger Bushell, the British officer who was the architect of the real escape. Group Captain Ramsey was mostly based on the senior British officer Herbert Massey. He was injured when he was shot down and walked with a limp. His injury prevented him from the escape attempt. Actor James Donnell walked with a limp and used a walking stick in the movie in honor of Massey. Royal Canadian Air Force pilot and prisoner of war Wally Floody was the inspiration for Charles Bronson's character, Danny Valinsky, the Tunnel King. He served as a technical advisor to the filmmakers for more than a year. Because of Floody, many details of the construction tunnel set by the studio were very well done. The actual size of the tunnel set was even accurate. When Floody finally had problems moving around in the set, he gave the thumbs up to the size. Gordon Jackson's role as McDonnell Intelligence is largely based on George Harsh, an interesting man. In the 1920s, Harsh had committed murder and was sent to jail for life. Having been a medical student, Harsh performed an appendectomy on a dying prisoner, saving his life. The governor of Georgia granted him a pardon, and he was set free. David McCallum stated in an interview that he felt a deep responsibility in faithfully portraying a real person. His character of Eric Ashley Pitt was based on Captain Peter Fanshawe. He was Bushell's appointed man to disperse 100 tons of bright yellow sand from the 3 tunnels throughout the compound. Now, Steve McQueen only accepted the role of Hiltz on the condition that he could get to show off his motorcycle skills. Even though he was top billed, his salary was only $87,500, while James Garner earned $150,000. McQueen personally held up production for almost 6 weeks because he demanded that the script be rewritten to give his character more involvement in the escape attempt. After viewing the early scripts, he saw his part as insignificant and greatly underdeveloped. He was particularly upset that his character all but disappears from the movie for about 30 minutes in the middle. He walked out demanding a rewrite. James Garner and James Colburn got together with McQueen to figure out what his gripes were about. Steve wanted to be the hero, but he didn't want to do anything that contradicted his character's indifference and sarcastic demeanor. Sturges, the director, actually considered writing his character out of the story altogether, but United Artists let him know that they considered McQueen vital to the movie's success. Therefore, another writer was hired to deal with the star's demands, and soon McQueen returned back to work. And yes, McQueen did do all his motorcycle riding in the movie, but there was one stunt that he didn't perform: the nail-biting 60-foot jump over the Swiss border fence. Steve recruited his longtime motorcycle buddy, Bud Atkins, from Los Angeles to successfully perform the stunt. The editing of the sequence going back and forth between McQueen and the stunt double was so good that Ferris Webster was nominated for an Academy Award. According to David McCullum, the barbed wire that Steve McQueen crashes into near the end of the film was actually made of rubber, and during the idle periods of time between takes, all cast and crew members, from stars Steve McQueen to James Garner to production assistants and even obscure food service workers, were asked to take thin 5-inch strings of black rubber and knot them every 6 inches around other thin strings of black rubber to create an enormous length. The finished product was the coils and fences of barbed wire seen throughout the film. In the movie, several Americans, including Hiltz and Henley, were among the 76 escapees. In the real escape, American officers did assist in the construction of the escape tunnels, but none were actual escapees. The Germans moved them to a newly constructed south compound 7 months before the escape. The American POWs were moved because the American troops were advancing quickly towards the camp. The Germans moved them farther away to keep them from the possibility of aiding their countrymen. There were many aspects of the escape that remained classified during production. Several of the actual prisoners from the Stalag III served as technical advisors for the film. These ex-POWs asked the filmmakers to exclude details about the help they received from their home countries, such as maps, papers, tools hidden in packages. They felt that this type of information might jeopardize future POW escapes. The filmmakers agreed, and they complied. Also not revealed for many years was the fact that the prisoners actually built a fourth tunnel called George. The film fails to suggest that many Germans willingly helped the escape itself. The forgers received a great deal of assistance from Germans who lived many hundreds of miles away with official documents. Several of the German guards, who were openly anti-Nazi, also willingly gave the prisoners items and assistance to aid in the escape. At the end of the movie, it seems that the commandant is hauled away for allowing the escape to happen. Actually, he was arrested for being involved in a fast-paced black market operation. This fact was brought to light during the Gestapo's investigation of the escape. For such an epic World War II film, we admit that the volume of available information has barely been mentioned here. The numerous intriguing facts and endless fascinating stories that belong to the 1963 movie and the real escape lend to a virtually never-ending video. We sure hope that this video has spiked your curiosity to learn more about the escape. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.